You're on the side of the
So that's a great location.
Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad at all.
Yeah, we bought our house in 1984. So, but you're going into this, it's an aging place. I'm a little nervous, but,
This is
you know,
assisted
it's
living?
independent.
It's independent.
We're taking 2 cars, it's independent, but we won't have, to mow the grass or plow
Do
the
any of
snow
that.
or, but you know, that sounds great.
Way, sure she is.
You're a kid.
So that's a blessing.
Oh,
My mother
I
goes
do
out there
that
and
all
mows the lawn.
every day, mow the lawn.
I did.
You used to.
Yeah, that was in the very beginning.
That isn't, no, nothing has been done in like 13 years.
We had a friend,
But get, I mean,
oh,
that's nice. I mean,
96 years old, and she was out there mowing for a
Oh,
while.
jeez.
And what she did is she got older, she went out and got the badge off her arm, so she could do it right.
He
yeah,
kids.
Judy,
Bobby, she's on the other side. Okay.
Judy, I read my estimate there.
Yes. Yeah, and
She's on.
God bless her, she, you know, she's still in touch. She was a
Oh, yeah, she's having a party.
She's in Florida.
She was a secretary, she was a hundred. She lives in Florida, she's just.
No, she lives there.
No, she lives there now.
She's, yes.
And
She's a wild.
yes, we are. She's, she's, got a lovely apartment. She is an independent woman. And you got a place that has assistance living and nursing care if you get to that.
Oh, the continuum of care, yeah.
Yeah, she's still at 100. It was my daughter's start, I got my house. But we really didn't have it. She didn't know it. She just had to go down. Because, and
4 or 5 years.
this one, you are,
Yeah.
and we have to sort of, you should move to a smaller house. The airport is too much for them. Changing houses.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my sister and Laura's gonna sit over here. Would you like to sit here or? Laura, you're gonna be right here? Laura?
I spoke, she knows.
Okay.
So I'm in the instruction.
I can do the chart.
Light, hi, da, da, hi, da, lal, hi, da, da, hi, da, light, light, da, light, da, 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 light, hi, da, 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 lal, hi, da, da, hi, da, lal, hi, da, da, hi, da. La la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la 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 da 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 So, good afternoon. We're gathered here today with sadness to remember Richard Fritz, whose life was a blessing. We're here to say a final goodbye to Richard, who was a loving life partner and husband to Linda for nearly 55 years, a generous and caring father to Roger and Laura, a good brother to his 3 siblings, including to Roberta, who survives him. He was a brother-in-law and an uncle, a father-in-law and more, and a good friend. But today's a difficult day because Richard Fritz is gone and no one can replace him. Loss and sadness and grief are what we feel today, and our hearts are broken. And yet, when we consider the extraordinary 89 years of Richard's life and all the gifts that he brought into the world and into our lives, and when we consider the good fortune that Richard was blessed with during those years, then our broken hearts today are also filled with gratitude. Because Richard lived a good life. He was good and kind and nice. He was deeply caring, not just for his family, but he had empathy and sensitivity for everyone he met. And he could intuit and sense other people's feelings immediately, and that included animals. Especially, he loved Laura's pets. Richard had a good sense of humor, and he could laugh at himself and at the world. So with all of this, as we look over Richard Fritz's life today, as we are gathered here at his funeral service, we also feel gratitude today. We're holding both sadness and gratitude. Linda, Richard was your helpmate and your soulmate. You met Richard in 1969. He had already graduated from Newton High School and graduated from UMass Amherst. And then he worked at his family's business, the Gorin department stores. Other people here have also worked there. That department store had been founded by his grandfather, Nehemias Gorin, and his parents and cousins and many other family members had worked there too. He then went to Babson College to get his MBA, and he became a computer programmer in what was then pretty much a brand new computer industry in the 1960s. And he worked for Honeywell and Cabot and other companies, working to help computer clients resolve issues with their computers. And then at a party, Richard met Linda. And then he had a friend ask for her phone number. And then they had their first date. They went to a play at the Loeb Theater. Linda thought that Richard was very kind-hearted, and that he was interesting to talk to. And that was August 1969. And by April 1970, they were married in a ceremony at Temple Sinai. And thus began a life together, raising a family with their children, Roger and Laura. And Roger and Laura, Richard was a wonderful father to you. Roger, to you, he was a good friend. And Laura, as you told me, and as I think you're going to say in just a few minutes, you were his princess. Roger, from your father, you learned to love baseball. He took you to your first Red Sox game at Fenway, and to love the movies and Siskel and Ebert. He loved history, and he taught that love of history to you, even if he didn't always get through those huge volumes of nonfiction history books, as you love to. He schlepped you and your friends when you were younger to all sorts of concerts, and he loved to talk sports with you. And Laura, he was your travel buddy, your animal lover, and your mentor, and your friend. He was your protector. He loved your pets, your dog and your cats, and he volunteered himself to be their human petting machine. He loved traveling to Miami Beach with you and to the Bahamas and other places on cruises. He was your backup dancer for Zumba. Not that many daughters can say that about their father. And I was very moved as you told me the other day how he taught you courage and strength, how he taught you to stick up for yourself and defend your rights. He had a great sense of humor. Laura, he once sent you flowers as if they had been sent by your dog. And even in his last days, when he was failing in hospice care, he joked that this person whom he recognized as his daughter was really only visiting him because she knew that there was a $20 bill in his wallet. And you shared that sense of humor together. How fortunate you both are, Roger and Laura, to have had this loving and caring man as your friend and as your father. And we offer you our heartfelt condolences today. And Roberta, we are also thinking of you today on the death of your brother, with your other siblings who have predeceased you, Dorothy and Malcolm. You once formed a foursome, and on this day, we offer you our condolences as well. Richard was admired by his friends and colleagues at the IRS, and many of them have sent messages to offer their love and support and to share their fond memories of him. He was good at customer service because he was, by his nature, a helpful person and smart. He retired at 70, and he enjoyed nearly 2 decades of well-deserved retirement. And Richard was proud to be a member of the Jewish people, having grown up at Temple Israel and raised his children at Temple Sinai in Brookline, proud at their bar and bat mitzvahs. And then later in life, he and Linda rejoined the temple, and I would often see him sharing a Zoom box with Linda at our Thursday morning study group on Zoom. He found support from the Temple Sinai community and from Judaism when his sister-in-law, Cynthia Siegel, died during COVID in 2020. In fact, he will be buried very close to her here at Sharon Memorial Park. And he also found support when Roger's wife, Rachel, who went by Sapphire, died in 2012. And Richard went right out and comforted Roger with his love and his support and his whole being. Linda, now we offer you our support. You lived a good life with Richard. You would have celebrated your 55th anniversary this coming April. How fortunate you are to have had him at your side as your soulmate. And so even on this sad day of loss, I pray that you may find comfort and that feelings of gratitude will wash over you, even amidst the sadness, as you consider Richard's path in life. May we all find comfort today by telling his story. In a few moments, bless you. In a few moments, we'll hear a few more reflections, words from Richard's daughter and wife, to tell of some of the blessings that Richard Fritz brought into the world. First, however, we turn to the wise words of Jewish tradition, which remind us that we're not the first ones who've traveled this road of loss, and which tell us that we can depend on the continuity of the cycles of life, that we can find comfort in them. Those words from our tradition remind us that we're not alone. And these teachings assure us of life's goodness and life's meaning, and that memory can provide us with strength and with blessing. First, the words of the 21st of Psalm 121. Shir lama'alot esa enai el haharim me'ayin yavo ezri, ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. Al yiten lamok raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakecha vayareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzetecha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. We lift up our eyes to the mountains. What is the source of our help? Where can we find help on a day like this? King David tells us in the Psalms, my help comes from Adonai, creator of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel will not slumber nor sleep. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. And from Psalm 90. Tfilah leMoshe Isha Elohim Adonai Ma'on Ata Hayita Lanu Bador Vador Baterem Harim Yuladu Baticholel Eretz V'Tevel Ume'olam Ad Olam Ata El. Moses' words, he was a man of prayer. Eternal One, you are our home in every generation. Before mountains emerged, before earth and space were born, from cosmos to cosmos, you are God. You bring us, poor weak ones, to death's door, and you urge us, return, children of Adam. In your gaze, a millennium is as yesterday gone, as quick as a watch in the night. You flooded us with sleep. Morning had us as wilted hay, blossoming with dawn, only to change at dusk, all wilted and dry. For all our crooked ways are open to your gaze. Our hidden stirrings are visible to your inner light. We note all our days, fleeing from your ire. Our years are like a fleeting thought. Our lifespan's days are 70 years, or if Hardy, 80 years, or if you're Richard, 89 years. Their gain is struggle and offense, and too soon we are chopped down, dispersed and gone. Teach us, O God, therefore, and make us aware to number and treasure our days, that we might attain a heart of wisdom. Please fill us up with your love so that we might sing and be happy every day. If only we could see your design clearly, your grandeur in our children. May your kindly presence, Eternal One, ever be pleasant for us. May our hands' efforts achieve their aims. Please let our efforts result in good. And this modern poem, which I think is also very appropriate. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness and loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude and pain to compassion, from grief to understanding and from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination. But life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage, made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. Now I'd like to invite Laura to come forward here on the floor, and we'll adjust the microphone for you. And then for Linda to follow with a few reflections about Richard.
My dad's probably overjoyed. He doesn't have to listen to this speech a million times. As both my mom and I were Toastmasters, which is a public speaking club. And my dad would listen to endless rounds of our speeches. But Dad, today, you're off the hook. When I was a little girl, I was my daddy's little princess. But as I grew older, our relationship changed. He became more my protector, my mentor, my travel buddy, my pet sitter, and even my friend. I'd like to give you glimpses into our lives together. A father's love and encouragement. When I was 13 years old, and I was out of school, I was really sad, and my dad asked me if I could go anywhere in the world, where would it be? And I responded, Disney World! And soon I was whisked away to the wonderful world of Mickey and Minnie. I had been to Disney World before, and I was way too scared to go on any of the rides. This time, I was determined. I was gonna conquer Space Mountain. We waited in line for about an hour, and then all of a sudden, I hear the screams, and I start to panic. And I say, I can't do this. We gotta get out of line right now. And my dad looked at me, and he said, Laura, we just waited an hour in line. You are going to do this. And he was right. I had so much fun that to this day, I'm a roller coaster lover. At 17, my dad decided it was time for me to learn to drive. I had had my permit actually for quite a while, but never actually driven. I struggle with dyslexia, and the driving instructor made fun of me. And my dad marched down there that very night and told them off. That very next day, he took me to an empty parking lot, and he gave me driving lessons himself. By the end of the lessons, I could drive all the way home. And I eventually got a license thanks to my dad. Memories of shopping and style. My dad owned a fabric store for many years, but my favorite part of fabric store was the closeness to TJ Maxx. It was like a dream. For a kid who grew up in the 80s wearing mostly 70s clothing and clothing from the discount store at Carter's, this was heaven. That year at camp, I was styling. And my dad noticed a girl wearing a familiar shirt. And he said to the girl, that shirt looks just like one I got for Laura. And the girl replied back, it's Laura's. She let me borrow it. My dad sighed and said under his breath, she has great taste. My dad sighed under his breath, expensive taste. My dad and I made countless trips to Miami. We had a condo, and over time, we ventured out more. One day, he suggested we go to Key West. We set ourselves up for the road trip. My dad forgot to mention one small, tiny detail: the longest bridge in the world. I hate bridges. To this day, I hate bridges. My dad sat there and encouraged me the entire way, saying, "Laura, you can do this. Laura, you know you got this. Laura, I know you can do this. Laura, we're almost there." On the way back, I was so nervous about this bridge, I couldn't sleep a wink. I spent the night tossing and turning. And on the way home, my dad ended up driving all the way back to Miami. And he gently woke me up in the garage and said, "Laura, we're home." 4.5 hours later. One time I surprised my dad with a cruise to the Bahamas. He always said it was his favorite trip. He was so relaxed and so happy. He still had the pictures from this cruise up on his wall. When we had to close down the condo in Miami, the only thing he took were the pictures of this boat. And then there was the IKEA. My dad took me to IKEA, and I said, "Dad, neither one of us can assemble furniture." He said, "Laura, I'm going to teach you a very important lesson. Hire somebody." I just recently moved, and I had to have some furniture assembled, and I did exactly what my dad told me. I hired somebody. My dad was terrified of my first cat, Mushu. He wouldn't go near him. The cat had to stay on our porch or in the den. But once he found out that Mushu had asthma, it was all over. My dad said, "I'm going to share my inhaler with him." And soon enough, the doors were wide open. My cat, Lily Lou, used to sit at the top of the stairs, waiting for my dad to pat her and tell her he loved her and how pretty she was before she'd go to bed with me. Then there's my current cat, Pansy Rose. My dad always said she needed a patting machine, and I'm just the man to do it. My mom often asked him to help her get Pansy into her carrier, knowing he was the only one who she'd love patting her. When I brought home my dog, 12-week-old Lacey Jane, and I put the puppy in his arms, he was the only one in the family who fully supported me. It was instant love at both sides for both of them. We had many trips throughout the summer and throughout the fall to my parents' house, where my dad would give her pats and loves. He often waited outside my apartment building on a bench just to pat Lacey and to tell her how much he loved her. Even in his final days, Lacey was by his side to give him kisses, whether he knew it or not. They shared a bond. They loved each other so much. A final tribute. I want to end this eulogy with a quote from Winnie the Pooh. It's actually on the back of Lacey's service vest, and it's my favorite quote. "Dad, you were braver than you believed. You were stronger than you seemed. You were smarter than you thought. And you were loved more than you can imagine. Dad, I love you. I'll miss you forever. I'll think of you in strawberry shortcake, in strawberry ice cream. I'll think of you in pasta, how it should be drowned in sauce. I'll think of you in burgers, how they should be on a bun with Swiss cheese. I'll think of you every time I pat my cat Pansy. I'll think of you every time I kiss Lacey goodnight. Thank you for being my friend, my teacher, my mentor. You will always be remembered. You will never be forgotten. Thank you for being my father. I loved being your daughter.
Linda?
I have to back and say.
It's a tough arc to follow. Richard, we almost made it to our 55th anniversary. We're just a month and a half shy. Yes, that's right. Richard and I were married almost 55 years ago. And overall, I'd say we had a wonderful life together. Richard was my best friend, my lover, my helpmate, and my companion. Perhaps our strong relationship was possible because of our different personalities. As a driven, conscientious firstborn, I found balance in Richard's being a middle child, the third of 4 siblings. As many of you know, middle children tend to be easygoing and accommodating. And that certainly was true of Richard, at least in his relationship with others, especially with our family. For example, 10 years ago, I accidentally drove into the garage and I sort of cut off the right mirror. I didn't cut it off, but I damaged it. I was really mad at myself. It was almost a new car. And even though the damage wasn't that bad, it was a new car. The next day, I didn't explain anything to Richard. I just said, Richard, please take the Camry to the auto body shop and have the mirror replaced. I don't care how much it costs. Just get it fixed. Richard didn't ask how the mirror got damaged. He didn't run out to the car to check it out. He didn't scold me or complain about the expense or even suggest that the mirror, which wasn't that badly damaged, didn't really need to be replaced. He just took the car to the auto body shop and he replaced the mirror. About a week later, after he watched me drive into the garage, at dinner that night, he said to me, "It's natural to gauge the distance from the right mirror to the garage door. But the trick is to focus on the left mirror. Bring it as close to the door frame as possible." I still use that method today, and he was right. What I particularly liked is when Richard gave advice, he was never harsh or demanding. He delivered in a way that showed that he genuinely cared about me. Richard's accommodations and gentle nature also made him a wonderful father. When the children were young, he was always take care of them when I went out shopping, on my very infrequent business trips, and even when I just needed to get away. But Richard liked to do things the right way. I remember on one of my business trips, this one to Washington, it was in the days before cell phones. When I returned back to my room after a full day of meetings, I saw that Richard had left a message. He said, Please call home as soon as possible. It's important. Concerned, I quickly returned his call. Richard, I got your message. What's wrong? Are the children okay? Are you okay? Is the house okay? Everything's fine. Well, it wasn't so fine a couple of hours ago. I was making them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they started to scream at me. They said I was making it all wrong. They said I had to put the peanut butter on both slices of bread and the jelly on one slice and put them two together. I never heard of making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that way. Linda, how do you make it for the children? The kids are right, Richard. That's how I make it. I do put peanut butter on both sides. But Richard, was it really so urgent to call me? Well, it was a couple of hours ago, he replied. You can't imagine how upset the children were. And I do feel badly about that. That was Richard. He genuinely cared how the family felt and always tried to support us. Even in his health declined in the last 10 years, Richard's empathy and desire to contribute never wavered. His decline started with neuropathy. About a year later, he was using a rollator. Then he had lung cancer and a successful operation, but he started to use a walker. Yet, Richard persisted in doing chores around the house, fixing my dresser drawer, changing light switches when we needed them, putting out the garbage. He even trimmed the bushes for as long as he could. Just before the COVID lockdown, Richard developed a severe case of diabetes. Eventually, he got it under control. But 3 years later, Richard developed severe kidney disease. Still, he insisted on helping out with household tasks. He continued to empty the dishwasher. A couple of months ago, I took over that task when I saw how difficult it was for him to carry the glassware over to the cabinet just a couple of steps away. But sometimes I'd come back late and the dishwasher cycle had completed, or I would forget, and I'd find the dishwasher empty, and Richard had done that. Because Richard cared, and he wanted to help with the household chores. Richard's caring and empathy skills resulted in his often reminding me that anger that people exhibit is sometimes a mask for sadness. His deep empathy helped convince me time and again that when I thought Laura and Roger were making bad choices, he'd say, Linda, it makes them happy, and it's really not as bad as you think. Throughout our marriage, Richard truly cared about his family. He was the heart of our family. Richard, you were my best friend, my lover, my helpmate, and my companion. And I do wish that we could celebrate our anniversary together on April 19th. And we could have even perhaps made it to our 60th anniversary. While I know that won't be, I want you to know that I miss you deeply, more than you can imagine. But Richard, I'm proud to have been your wife.
We offer you both our condolences, and Roger too, and to your whole family. And thank you for sharing those beautiful words with us. I'd like to invite the congregation now to please rise in body or in spirit as I recite the El Malei Rachamim prayer, the prayer that I think in Judaism is one of our tradition's most beautiful prayers, that asks God to welcome Richard's soul and to give him eternal rest and to assure us that his memory shines on like the glow of the heavens. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamrumim Amtsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kedoshim Utehorim Kezoha Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Daniel Elisha Shehalach Lolamo Bala Rachamim Yasti Rehu Beseter Kenafav Lolamim Vitzrohor Bitzroh HaChaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hunach Alato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. God filled with mercy, who dwells in heaven's heights, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your eternal presence, amid the ranks of the holy and the pure, illuminating like the brilliance of the skies, the soul of our beloved Richard Fritz, who has gone to his eternal place of rest. May you, God, source of compassion, shelter him beneath your wings eternally and bind his soul among the living, that he may rest in peace. And together we say, Amen.